Well, folks, once again, I got a great opportunity to talk with 35th State Senator Drew MacEwen, also Deputy Leader for the Senate Republicans this session. How you doing, Drew?
Great, Jeff. Thanks for having me on again.
For sure, and thank you for talking with me. You're in the Senate Communication Office there, and it looks great, and it's part of a great statewide effort to bring folks' representatives closer to them across the state. I know we've talked about ways that citizens now can offer remote testimony by being in their houses and things like that. But this is a good opportunity for you and your colleagues to reach out to. I know we're close, but for other places,
Right.
there's some pretty big distance between you and where the constituents are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the wonderful things with technology today and with some of the remodeling that's occurred in Senate facilities yeah, especially for my colleagues that represent the far reaches of the state be able to have that outreach to their communities and that aren't as close as you and I are. But yeah, great tool. Great. I think the more open, the more transparent we are, that's it's better for everybody.
I was watching the big game yesterday and I counted at least two commercials that were
Yeah.
talking about the Washington state and the budget deficit and was trying to explain while we have an increase in revenue by about $10 billion, our spending is over that. And so it's causing these deficits. Did you see those ads?
I sure did. Yeah, and I'm grateful they're out there. That's an outside party. It's not affiliated with us. That's doing those. But it's again, it's shining a light on what the real problem is. It's not that we've had a revenue downturn in our state. It's that we've had an unsustainable growth in spending. And I always try to bring this back to what would this be like, the equivalent of in a family budget. And so let's say the Slakey household sits down. And you're making your budget for next year, and you say, okay, in addition to what we have right now, we want to buy a vacation home in Florida. Let's throw in Palm Springs. Oh, and I want a Ferrari.
Heck
And
yeah.
next year rolls around, and voila, we have a $10 million shortfall in the Slakey budget. Well, do you, or do you just have a wish list that is extremely higher than what your revenue is? And that's what's happening in the state. And a number of policy bills were passed over the last few years that required this future spending, and now that's all come home to roost. And voila, we don't have the resources to do that. And meanwhile, when you look over the last decade, rounding things off, state spending has doubled. It's gone from when I first came into office, our budget was 32 billion. Today, it's over 70 billion. Most households haven't seen that kind of increase, and again, it's an unsustainable trajectory. And in the last few bienniums, we've seen major sweeps out of the rainy day fund, out of our surplus, and that's created yet even a further issue because if we do end up with that economic downturn, we're going to have a triple whammy. We're going to have a spending pattern that was not sustainable. We would have lower revenues, and we wouldn't have any way to backstop that with a savings, frankly. And so it's my hope that we get better budgeting processes in place and can have a more sustainable resource here and be better stewards of the taxpayers' money.
It seems like when I talked with your counterparts in the House from the 35th, Representatives Griffey and Couture, they were, and this was a little soon as the session got underway, but they were a little I don't know if excited was the right word, but they were a little more excited than they had been with the previous administration in the governor's seat when it became to kind of cross aisle collaboration and some of the ways that he's talking about looking at saving money and spending money and getting hiring Jesse Jones to find where there's opportunities for fixing some of that stuff. What about on your colleagues in the Senate side? What are they hearing now that we're a few weeks in? Is it kind of reverting back to how it was? Is there still kind of that positive momentum of across the aisle collaboration?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things there. The governor's inaugural speech, Governor Ferguson certainly laid out a more pragmatic approach to budgeting than his predecessor did, and I appreciate that. And we'll embrace that fully until proven differently. Um, since I don't currently serve on Ways and Means, I've taken on some different roles in the Senate, so I'm not in on the budget negotiations that are ongoing. Can't speak specifically to what's happening in there, but I would sure hope that the legislature and the budget writers yield to what he said, and that is, we cannot sustain this spending growth, this spending pattern, and and he threatened to use the veto pen if needed. So it's incumbent upon the legislature to produce and pass a budget that the governor is going to sign. That frankly, the Democrat majority in Olympia has had the luxury for the last 12 years of an administration that never saw a spending increase it did not like. It always went along with it, and so now it's going to be a little bit of a gut check for budget writers to be more realistic in their projections, not use accounting gimmicks. And when I say that, I'm not implying something nefarious. It's that what I mean by that is there was always growth assumptions that were made that were not realistic. It wasn't like they were doing something nefarious with the budget. Don't want to insinuate that at all.
Right.
But they made assumptions that just frankly were not realistic.
Yeah, Representative Couture kind of talked with me a little bit about that and how that played out in the second half of the biennium, but it gets a little wonky. But you're right. There was some assumptions made there when it comes to back to the 35th, and it's really in school districts across the state. There is a lot of budgets right now that are being looked at closely. Shelton School District, for example, is really looking at some hardships there when it comes to their budgeting practices. What are some of the things that the state is doing to either help mitigate what's happening, help the districts across the state better steward their money, or how is this going to play out, do you think?
Yeah, again, I think this is it's brought a lot of things home to roost, in that when it comes to local government, whether it's a school district or a county government, city government, I think Olympia is starting to wake up to the fact that you can't continue to pass unfunded mandates and do dictations on everything that needs to happen and not provide the resources to do that. But yet again, here the state's put itself in a situation that it doesn't have those resources either. So um, the one of my former colleagues used to always say on the Senate floor that the school district of the Olympia legislature, and that what he was referring to was the constant dictates that we were putting down of requirements of school districts. Look, I'm a big believer that when it comes to education, as a state, should we set a standard on what a high school diploma means in this state? Yeah, I think we have the I think most people expect that we do that, and that we exercise that authority. But I think we got to get out of the way then and let districts implement that as they best see fit for their local students, for their local taxpayers. But all too often we try to interweave ourselves into that, and we really got to kind of get out of the way. And more money does not always equal better results. Um, Education spending in the state has gone up astronomically over the last decade. We now spend over $18,000 per pupil on K-12 education in our state. And while that trajectory of spending on education has gone up, what have we seen? Test scores have gone down and standards are not being met. And the number of kids that can't do eighth grade reading, eighth grade math is very, very disturbing. And you combine that then with districts that struggle to pass a levy or a bond. Well, you're starting to see the backlash, frankly, from parents. We've given you so much more, and we've seen so much less. And that again, I think there's some hard coming to moments of truth here for all units of government in this state, and how we allocate things and how we properly should be spending money.
So does that then come down to more I guess you would call it local control to district by district opportunities, or is that a revamp of OSPI, or how does it get back to either some sort of a equal footing, or knowing that if it was $18,000 per pupil that money goes into getting better results for
Yeah,
that
I think we have to have
district or
more
for the state.
accountability, frankly. Uh, and again, I do believe in local control. I believe that we should have a state standard, and we let local jurisdictions best determine how they're going to meet those standards. And we've got to get back to the core functions of education. You know, let's teach the reading, the writing, and the math, and that is a big part of the issue too. And I think we ask so much of parents today when it comes to education, and then on the other hand, we tell them to stay out of the way, that you don't know what you're doing. And that's the message that's been sent by this legislature, by the Democrat majority in both the Senate and the House, just in the last week and a half with the parental rights bill, and stripping that back further. It's a conflicting message that does not resonate real well with people.
Yeah, let's go back and talk a little bit about that. I saw some of the news notes that came out from Olympia in the last week. Remind folks what that parental rights bill is, how we got to it, and what's going on with that.
Sure. And so, if folks recall, so last year there was an initiative to the legislature that we passed that enshrined in the state law parental rights, that you have the right to know what's being taught in school, that you have a right to know about uh, mental health issues or issues that might arise with your child's health within school, or and treatment that may have been given or may be recommended, and that you have the right to know about anything pertaining to law enforcement issues. And what's happened, there's been both a Senate bill and a House bill that have passed. We'll see how this all comes out throughout the process. But basically, has rolled that back, and you have the Senate Democrat leader Jamie Peterson saying in an interview late last week that a 13-year-old has the right to make his or her own decisions about his or her health care, and parents don't have a right to intervene on that. Again, I think the majority of people, certainly in my district, disagree with that notion, and that's a real heartburn for a lot of folks. And I believe in parental rights. We are not. I dismiss the notion that we co-parent with the state of Washington. I believe families know best. Look, unfortunately, in the world, there are bad parents, okay? But that doesn't mean that we strip away the parental rights of all parents. And that to me just goes to the crux of many of the issues that we're facing right now in our education system.
Yeah, I noticed that too in certain aspects when it comes to I don't want to call them problem kids, but kids that, maybe disrupt classrooms or
Right.
things like that, and the focus of attention shifts more to I don't want to say protecting that child, but kind of focusing on that child more than the overall well-being of the rest of the class. It's kind of that squeaky wheel kind of a situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was a directive from OSPI a number of years ago that when you had a disruptive student in the class, you remove the entire class and leave the disruptive one there. Uh, what is that? And I think most people would agree that it should be the other way around. We've not empowered teachers to enforce, common decency discipline in their classrooms, and we see some of those results.
We don't talk too much about national things here, but we're so close to our neighbors to the north, Canada. Is there any conversations in Olympia worried or concerned of any impacts that any possible of the tariff things that are going on may impact any sort of building projects or construction projects across the state?
Yeah, I mean, it's been brought up. There isn't any legislation, that addresses that, and there really can't be. I mean, because it's a federal issue.
Yeah.
And I did recently an interview with the Vancouver radio station, discussing this. And look, I think we can all agree that the president has a unique communication style, and how he tries to bring issues to the forefront. And many of us would maybe do that differently. than he does. But at the end of the day, we have serious issues at both of our borders. Obviously, I do believe the issue is much more pronounced at the southern border, but there are issues at the northern border as well, that he wants to have addressed and that I think should be addressed. But there's also the other issue of tariffs that go in the opposite directions as well. And you look at the 250% tariff that Canada levies on U.S. dairy products, for instance. And he's talking about a 25% tariff. I mean, it is his style and how he forces a negotiation to happen. And look, I may choose to do that differently, and I think many people maybe would. But at the end of the day, he's bringing the parties together to, okay, let's address border issues. And Prime Minister Trudeau, said, hey, we're going to make some changes here. That's a positive, right? And we're also going to talk now about the tariffs in both directions. And and as I said in Vancouver last week when I did that look, families and friends, we have disagreements from time to time. And, I was asked, is this going to strain our relationship? I don't think it will. I mean, it might be a little uncomfortable at times, but our history and our shared economies go much deeper and further back than that. And I think that if we can have the discussions at the table and talk about what is most fair and how do we work together, I think at the end of the day we'll come up with the right solutions.
One of the other kind of things that you get to do in your position is have opportunities to highlight people that made impacts in the district. And I'm bringing up the Joint Memorial 8009 that you have put in to the Committee on Transportation last month. It is to rename a stretch of State Route 16 to Joe Mentor. Tell me a little bit about how this came about.
Yeah, the family actually brought this up to me last year. It was too late in the session to do anything with it. So Joe Mentor was a state representative out of Kitsap decades ago. Served 2 terms in the House. Was a prominent business person in the Kitsap region, and also a big conservationist, and did a lot of work for the betterment of the community in Kitsap. And I think it's right to name this overpass, after him, and recognize the work and the contribution that he gave to Kitsap and the community as a whole. And so, yeah, it was a pleasure to have that heard last week and have the family here testify in support of it. And I'm confident we'll move forward with that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. He developed and built the original El Dorado Hills development on Highway 16. It was in Sunset Magazine, and
Yeah.
so very cool. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate the time again, as always, Drew, and I look forward to talking with you more as the session unfolds, as there are more things that impact the 35th from the Senate Communication Office. It looks good in there for sure. It's 35th District State Senator Drew MacEwen. Thanks, Drew.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. You have a great day.
You too.